We are talking Basement, the Terror Below, also simply known as Basement. And this is written, directed and starring Thomas Grieser. And this is a German found footage movie and is a very low budget movie, but very effective. What's the story? Well, it focuses on this guy who has recently moved into an apartment, a rented apartment. And it's a two-storey building and he lives on the top floor. And every night he's hearing banging and strange noises coming from the basement. So he's on the top floor, there's another apartment beneath him, and then there's the basement. Now the apartment beneath him is empty, so he knows there's no one in there, so there's something going on in the basement. But he can't find any evidence of anything that should be making the noise. He assumes it's the pipes, but then it's proved otherwise. But it continues and continues, and it's just keeping him up. And eventually he kind of ends up uncovering a dark secret that was that something has happened in this building some years ago. But that's only the start of the problems, as there may be multiple things true at once. And what will happen, you will have to watch the movie and find out. So it's often said that if you get very low budget movies, horror is the best way to start. In that genre, found footage is probably the best way to get a low budget movie, off the ground. And this clearly, when you're watching it, you can tell it's a very, very low budget movie. There is really only one member in the cast. There's a couple of scenes where we get an extra person. There's like 3 other actors in the movie, but their scenes are only like a minute or 2 at most each. So it's just one guy. There's really nothing flashy about the movie. We get a little bit of VFX shots, and but not much. There's maybe like 10 seconds of VFX in the whole movie. So, that doesn't sound very good, you might be thinking, but this movie does have one key element. It's genuinely quite unsettling. And I think this is down to a couple of reasons. So the first one is that I think the acting here is solid. Now, the guy who's behind it, Tom Grieser, obviously this is a kind of a passion project for him. But I have to say, his kind of, the way he's acting, the reason why he's filming, he's effectively just scared and he's trying to sort of document what's going on, and talking sort of helps him sort of rationalize things. So he's kind of talking to the camera, putting his thoughts down like a kind of a video diary and try and document these noises. And at first it thinks it's something mundane. But as we kind of go to investigate the basement on a couple of times, it genuinely has a palpable sense of dread. A real kind of like, oh God, I can actually feel myself getting a little nervous when I'm kind of watching this movie. Because the acting is solid. The pacing is very, very slow and deliberate, but it kind of works in really building a kind of like a sense of the unknown, because the movie doesn't, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, what the actual kind of situation is, but he's investigating all the kind of the mundane things. He's getting a plumber around, things like that. So it genuinely feels like a kind of real interpretation of someone just being really scared and kind of doing all these things. Now, I do have one problem with this character, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I have to say, I think the acting here, at least the performance on screen, genuine, very good. And I think one of the issues I've often said with horror films on this channel is I think depictions of fear are solely lacking in a lot of horror movies. I always liken, if you ever watch like a prank video, where someone jumps out at someone and how that victim kind of reacts, that's more a genuine reaction to fear or that kind of stimulus. And you don't often see that sort of thing on screen, but although that's not exactly the case, we're not talking massively with jump scares here, but you just have a more of a realistic idea of fear, and as such that translates to you as the viewer. There's no fancy equipment here. He has this kind of again, so a lot of the things that will sound like it should be bad, I think actually benefit this film. So it has this camera that has night vision, and the night vision is very good, to be honest. But again, it just makes it feel more authentic. This movie's biggest strength is it kind of feels like this is just some guy with weird noises that is coming down from his basement. And, you know, he's talking to his landlady and she's kind of giving him the brush off. And then it just kind of has that sort of sense of realism and that sense of growing sort of dread as he's becoming more bold and more bold in his kind of investigation. And there's sequences when he's going down in the basement, and again, it looks all mundane at times, and it's just, I think, very, very well done. It's a good sense of really capturing a sense of paranoia and fearfulness. So I thought that was well done. Now, there's not really much I can say to outside of that, because the movie isn't really a complex movie in regards to narrative. It's a relatively short film, so it doesn't outstay its welcome. But I just think that's its kind of key factor here. But it carries the film so much. Now, I do have an issue, as I say, with the depiction of this guy, because although I think his acting is solid, I think some of the choices that this character makes don't make some sense. You might say it's relatively minor things, like he never really going to get one of his friends or family to come stay with him and kind of hear it. There's choices here where he doesn't turn on lights. Stuff, just like things like that I think, okay, as much as I think the acting is kind of quite solid, some of the way this character is acting, I do think is not, you know, it's not logical in a way. But then there's a sequence towards the end where the guy is just frozen with fear. He's just literally, he sees something and we see it, and he's just like on the ground and he's just frozen there, and in the film for you know, a good hour, and he can't move because he's so paralysed with fear. The other thing I would say that is a bit of a detractor for this film is the actual ending. Now, the very final shot of the movie is a little disappointing, and I wish this movie had ended in a different way, because I think the ending is the worst thing in this movie. I mean, we're talking like the very end, the last kind of like 30 seconds. This is when we get our VFX, some of the VFX anyway. I also think the movie's a little undecided about, and this kind of goes hand in hand with that ending, the movie's a little undecided about what's actually going on, because it kind of almost implies there's multiple things that are going on, but it only ever kind of hints at, oh, these are a couple of possibilities, and I just think, it kind of doesn't make sense because the final thing kind of comes out of nowhere. So, this might seem like a short review, but it's a very simple film. There's really not much to it. It's one guy gradually getting more and more scared in an apartment. I think it's effective in that respect. Narratively, there's not a lot to it, but I think it works in the context of what this movie's trying to do, but it's undone a little bit by some questionable decisions, things that are done, things that are not done, and then the ending, I think, was misjudged. I will give it a 6 out of 10 though, because I think for the most part this movie does invoke fearfulness from you as the audience. So in that respect, I would check it out. Anyway, 6 out of 10, have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.